Welcome once again. In a shorter version of the weekly From the Desk of the President missive, Cyril Ramaphosa hones in on the draft national implementation framework towards the professionalization of the public service. He says he wants to implement the program speedily as his way of fulfilling his promise when he came into power to build an efficient, capable and ethical state. Newly appointed Commissioner of the Public Service Commission, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, joins us now via Skype. A very good morning to you, Professor. Remind us of the Constitution, the mandate and the work of the Public Service Commission.
The Chapter 10 of the Constitution is dedicated to the Public Service Commission as a Chapter 10 institution, and the crafters of this Constitution had the foresight to understand that if you wanted to achieve anything thus written in the Constitution, you would need a capable public service, a capable state. And equally so, this is confirmed by the letter of the President and by many other observers to say all policies which fail to be implemented, corruption being rampant, as well as the service delivery challenges, can only be solved in a major way when you build the capacity of the state. So this implementation framework is a concrete step in that direction.
The implementation framework, as the President states in the letter, was approved by government, a cabinet, in November last year, and there have been consultations in the past 2 weeks. Take us through these consultations. Who was consulted? Has the public at large been brought into this process?
The public has been brought into this process, but not yet enough participation. We see there have been several seminars, forums being organized, and the document is available in the website of the National School of Governance, and Public Service Commission will also be making that available as well. And I'm sure the Department of Public Administration will have that as well. So the public is free, and this letter from the President is urging the public to make their inputs, because this is not just a government affair. It is a public affair, because ultimately public service is designed and crafted to serve the interest of the public.
So one of the points that is being decried here is that all too often people have been hired into and promoted to key positions for which they are neither suitable nor qualified. This affects government's performance, but also contributes to nepotism, political interference in the work of departments, lack of accountability and mismanagement and corruption. Of course, you've just recently been brought into this position. How does this tie in to your deliverables in this position?
Public Service Commission is responsible for promoting those particular values and principles which are outlined in the Constitution, that of serving the public, being responsive to the needs of the public and public participation. So in our work, we monitor and investigate to see if every department, provincially, nationally, is adhering to this. At the same time, we also receive all kinds of complaints or even observations where this is systematically not being observed. One of these many other issues, for example, would be issues of recruitments, where people do wrong things in order to service patronage, bringing in people who do not qualify instead of helping to strengthen the public service. The other one could be something like departments always defaulting on paying service providers within the 30 days, which is legally mandated, which in turn leads to many small businesses which happen to be black to collapse.
So one of the other points that comes up is that Director Generals and provincial heads of departments are particularly affected in some departments, DGs, HODs, and executive managers have had stability of tenure, enabling the departments to function with little disruption. But in most of these departments where there is leadership stability, audit outcomes tend to be positive and public funds can be accounted for. Where there is a high turnover of heads of department, there's often administrative turmoil. This point is interesting in relation to news that was in several Sunday newspapers yesterday about the reports, assumptions, and hearsay that the president wants to remove the Director General of the State Security Agency. Is this linked?
Well, I doubt. Remember that if you go back to the issue of the State Security Agency, it has had its own history, which is different, which is not what I may be focusing at here. It's been in the Zondo Commission. You have had many challenges which have been afflicting that particular, department over the years. So here the principle is not an isolated case, but rather to say if you want to implement policies, you must have stability in terms of leadership. You must have stability in terms of policy. Then you'll begin to see the results.
So South Africa has the Labour Relations Act, which protects workers in terms of when and how they can be removed from their jobs. And one imagines that as you embark on this process, you're going to have to let go of some people. How are you engaging with this topic?
Well, I do think that first, if you talk of a principle, it is usually the one forward-looking to say, as you employ people to professionalize, these are the requisite skills that are needed, and therefore it has to be complied with. So right from the recruitment process up to the assessment of performance, these are the issues in a merit-based system. That's the first one. Of course, as you see many investigations and many other things taking place, where the appointments were not proper, or where you had, acting appointments, I guess there will be moved to stabilize those to make sure that you do not have the kind of instability that has been going on. Labour Relations Act does indicate that if you realize in your skills audit, which should be scientific rather than selective, you must provide capacitation. And where capacitation is still not, achievable, then you make a call according to each one of the departments as to what next step is there when the person cannot live up to the job. There is performance assessment, there is skills audit and so forth, but such processes should be seen to be transparent, to be adhering to the constitutionally provided laws.
There's also the possibility of legal challenges. How are you anticipating to deal with these?
Well, it will be individual departments which invoke whatever contractual issues with their respective, heads. Public Service Commission simply investigate and indicate where there are systematic problems, especially those reported. And at times it has assisted and will be assisting in the crafting of standards, which ensure that professionalization of public service takes place. So in so doing, it will always be asking a question, what is legally permissible and what is within the Constitution?
So the letter also speaks of a process that's currently underway to speed up the implementation. Tell us about that and what sort of timeframes you're looking at.
There is a sense of urgency because the public comments and input should be completed within a few months so that the matter goes back to Cabinet for any review, and then the Parliament can pass that as a law. So it is quite an urgent program because this was stated as one of the 4 pillars in the State of the Nation address, And it has always been a topical issue in government, in the major political parties, to say deploying capable people is key. You can spend as much money, have commissions, and have investigations. You won't stem the flow because it's more like cleaning the drops on the floor. But if you adopt this policy of professionalizing, you'll have fixed the roof so that there is no leakage.
Professor Fikeni, you know that corruption is one of the biggest conversations in the country, and whenever there is such a conversation, the arrows are pointed back at the ruling party, the African National Congress, most of the time, the very party that makes up most of cabinet. So I want to ask you, is Cabinet excited about embarking on this process of cleaning up the mess that they supposedly have made?
Well, I can't psychoanalyze what is going on in the minds of the cabinet members. But what I can say is that from public pronouncements, as well as public pressure, as well as embarrassing revelations on how institutions were weakened, even political parties, even observers, legal, processes do reveal how weakened the state has been over time because of patronage network, which prioritize loyalty rather than capacity. So everybody realized the problem. Of course, political will and having political champions to drive this process will make it easier and faster. But I can't possibly psychoanalyze and say how excited each individual is and how some may have reservations. That will be left into those who do psychometric testing and other psychoanalysis. But with us, we will just deal with the objective facts.
Yeah.
And we will do the work in terms of making sure that professionalization of public service is, effected.
I hear you, but I'm sure you can appreciate the anxiety amongst the South African population. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. Just remind us once again, how does the public engage with this process?
If you go to the website of the National School of Governance, you will be able to download the framework for implementation of professionalization. And then there are indications there as to where you send the comments. And equally so, I think even if you just put in on Google, that particular document is readily available. And there are even seminars or consultation forums which are provided in a series of seminars that the National School of Governance is actually conducting currently in the last few weeks. So that in itself provides for anyone who wants to make an input, and that in itself will be most appreciated, because a future we want should come out of co-creation with everyone providing their leadership and role.
I hear you, but I'm just worried that once again we're leaving out that portion of the South African population who does not have access to digitization and might not be able to engage properly. But I just want to ask you, I know I said the last question, but a viewer has asked us, please ask the Commissioner, Dr. Somadoda Fikeni, what is he planning to do with executive authorities and heads of departments who are ignoring the recommendations of the Public Service Commission? This is prevalent, especially in rural provinces like the Eastern Cape.
Thank you very much for asking that particular question. Public Service Commission is going to have a plenary. Among other things, is to actually look at that particular issue. There is also a shortcoming in the legislation, as well as the provision that made the Public Service Commission, which I think is what once afflicted the Auditor General, where the Public Service Commission can investigate and then recommend or advise a department. And what seemed to be more important now is how to make Public Service Commission's recommendation have an impact in a manner that you can't just ignore them. Yes, we take these to the respective MECs, the ministers, We take these to Parliament because we assist Parliament in doing its oversight. But I do think that there is more that needs to be done to make sure that, like public protector, certain things, especially those which involve very serious non-delivery of services, can be enforced rather than simply coming in as a recommendation.
Commissioner Fikeni, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
My pleasure, Jason.
There you have it, the Public Service Commission head, Professor Somadoda Fikeni.